Who likes war media? Okay, I'm not a soon-to-be divorced dad over the age of 45, so me neither. But hear me out, okay? I know all everybody was talking about last year in terms of TV was the first season of House of the Dragon, the third season of The Boys, or season whatever of Stranger Things. But I really think the best series of the year has to be SAS Rogue Heroes. Whoa, wait. I know the title's a bit but just give it a chance, okay? I have absolutely no clue why I love this show. And I've been told by people I know they have no clue why I love this show, but it is just so weirdly good. And I think it deserves so much more attention than it's got. So let's just go through it, starting from the beginning, and unpack a bit why this show is just so incredible. So we've got our main character, David Sterling, who makes it very clear why the letters SAS are in the title of the show by being an absolute sassy bitch throughout.
Frenchman, right. That'll be it.
Actually, most of the characters in this are sassy bitches, and we love them for it. By the way, if you haven't realized it yet, that's Connor Swindles playing him, best known as Puss in Boots from Sex Education. Or Adam from Sex Education. Sorry, I keep making that mistake because he's the only person I've ever known who can actually make the sad cat eyes in real life. I hadn't even seen the show before I decided to make this video, and I thought, oh, I'll just put on the first episode to see for comparison's sake, and I watched every episode in one sitting. Side note, maybe it's just me being a bit stupid, but why does he look weirdly different in this? Like, am I the only one that noticed that? No, I'm not. I've asked other people. I promise I'm not crazy. Although I am more than a bit stupid, actually. There are also two other main characters we get to meet as well. Jack O'Connell plays Paddy Mayne, and I'm unfamiliar with both actor and character, but the trailer does describe him as a maverick, so I can only assume he's a massive Logan Paul fan. Bad timing there, I guess. And Jock Lewis, played by Alfie Allen, who you might know from that time he killed a dog. Or that time he killed some children. Or that time he killed some zombies. Or that time he killed some prostitutes. He also looks weirdly different in this, but I think that's just because they bleached his eyebrows or something. Either that or Mia Goth borrowed them to use in Pearl. So during the opening credits, we get to one of the biggest complaints I've seen about this show online, and that's the music choice. It's either too loud, too modern, or too American, or too whatever. I guess it's just bad, no matter which way you look at it. Which is actually really funny to me because I think you can tell the age of some of the viewers by the way they complain about it. Now, fun fact about the TV, there's this fun thing called a remote, and if the music's too loud, you can just... There you go. Problem solved. Also, what were you expecting the soundtrack to only be Buddy Holly songs and Mozart? What World War II movie do you know that actually uses period-appropriate music? Or were you just heartbroken that this wasn't the 1001st movie to use Fortunate Son? You know what? Now that I think of it, I believe The Great Dictator did actually use period-appropriate music, you know, from 1940 and before. But whether or not that was because they knew it would piss off boomers if they didn't, or if it's just because the movie came out in 1940, it's just one of those unsolvable mysteries of life. Also, AC/DC was from Australia, and so not very American. But never fear, curmudgeons, if it really was the music that offended you so, just get the Blu-ray version, because they replace it with some knockoff garbage that does not hit the same at all in either the first or last episodes. Shit. There are also a lot of negative takes about all the swearing and modern dialogue used in this, which, I mean, I guess is fair. If it's not accurate, it's not accurate. But, I mean, I don't know why you put that much stock in a show that literally said in the trailer that it's only mostly accurate, but, like, Personally, I love most of the dialogue in the show. I get that it's not everybody's cup of tea. It's not exactly MCU level safe and digestible, but I think a lot of it is pretty fun. It may come off as cheesy at times, which it definitely is, but I think the talented cast gives it the delivery that it needs to work. Okay, I'm not going to go too deep into the plot. I definitely think you should watch this for yourself. The basic rundown of the first episode is that all three of our leads are very fed up with the way the higher-ups are handling the war over in Africa. So Lewis and Sterling come up with a plan to test the viability of parachuting behind enemy lines to wreak unexpected havoc on the Germans. The test goes less than smoothly, and Paddy decides not to join the others, and instead go fight over in Burma.
We're not at war with Japan yet.
No, if Paddy's going, we will be quite soon.
And I'm sure we'll never see him again in the show. So they do actually state that the three of them know each other so well from training, and I have no clue how accurate that is to real life, but I can at least assume in this show, these two bonded pretty well over their shared enemy. And just to clarify, I'm not talking about the Nazis, I'm talking about this dude. One last thing I do want to mention about this episode is the scene directly after the failed parachute drop, where Sterling hallucinates his father chastising him. I don't have anything specific to add in terms of commentary over this scene at the moment, but I do want you to keep it in mind for later when I do talk about my one major complaint about this show. As is the opening of episode 2, where after being rushed to the hospital in Alexandria, David has some brief flashbacks to his mother and life before the war. Emphasis in brief, though, lasting mere seconds. We also get an introduction to Colonel Dudley Clark, a British operative who deals mostly in espionage via a meeting between him and Algerian spy Eve Mansour, who was in the first episode, but only very briefly. Now, the interesting thing about her character is that she's, well, not real, but you know what? It's an excuse to get Sophia Boutella on the show, so I'm on board. By the way, if you haven't watched Climax, do. The two of them discuss the fictional regiment Clark created to fool the Germans using actors and wooden planes, and she expresses the desire to have escaped French soldiers serve with the British forces. Look, it'll all become important later, but right now we have to get to one of my new favorite lines ever when Jock comes to visit David in the hospital.
Rigorous concern is preferred, so I will be rigorous in my concern.
I have no clue why I love it. I just quote it a lot, and I feel really bad for any friends or family I have that's going to be in the hospital in the future, because I'm definitely fucking saying that to you. Anyway, David wants to persevere with their experimental unit, but Jock decides to go back to Tobruk, and Paddy is put in jail. Again. Now, there has been a bit of pushback on the show in case of Paddy's character. Apparently, some of his family take offense to the fact that he's been written as a quote-unquote drunken Irishman, which is not something I personally see per se, but once again, I didn't know the man, so I'm not going to disagree with that, and I think his family knows best. I mean, I get the Irish part, obviously, although apparently the accent isn't great. I'm not one to judge on that, but I don't really get where he's drunk in the show. I mean, he does drink a little bit, barely ever to drunkenness, though, and it's just especially confusing because it's definitely David who's shown to be the one with the alcohol dependency, but I don't know. Not my place to judge that. Although I do have to say, I really think he's definitely one of, if not the most beautifully tragic characters in the show. The fact that he's a poet makes the contrast between his violent actions and beautifully written dialogue actually make sense.
Eastward to the sea, there's a Burma girl is sitting, and I know she thinks of me.
And I'm probably going to bring this up a few more times, but literally any time Paddy and David talk is a legitimately amazing scene. The two of them just play off each other so well, and if I could include all of their full-length conversations in this video, I would.
Because the fucking land-owning, gentrified boy-buggering toffs who used to shoot grouse on my father's Highland estate, well, now they're running the British Army.
The way these two incredibly broken and frustrated men are able to love, hate, respect, and understand each other is just so incredibly done. I'm sorry, I'll stop fawning over them for now, but I do just have to mention that he also might be gay. I don't know, I could be wrong about that. Maybe it's just supposed to be a very close friendship between him and Owen, but I definitely think I'm getting some Jojo Rabbit vibes between those two, and it's not just because Freddie Finkel's standing right over there. Come to think of it, is this the third time he's played someone real or fictional who's fought in World War II? Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, it'd be Jojo, this, and Atonement. That was it. Oh, yeah, because Danny Hardman, joined the Navy or something after that. I don't know. Ending of that movie sucked, but he didn't have anything to do with that, so back to this. After healing up a bit and going through some physical therapy, David sneaks into GHQ in a fun little scene that's somehow more believable than the way he apparently actually did it, even though that's apparently also a little contested.
What on earth has happened to your top button? Do it up, Corporal.
He does this in order to present his and Jack's plans to the generals Auchinleck and Ritchie, and through the power of nepotism, he actually gets them to listen. They then decide to take Dudley Clark's ghost unit and give it to Sterling to make reality, with Clark dubbing them
the SAS.
Hey, it's the name of the thing. I see what you're doing there. He also gets Paddy out of jail on the condition that he joins the new regiment. So you're telling me he's not just gonna leave the show to go off and fight in Asia? What? Maine also brings along Owen and this scary man, and they begin recruiting. Through, of course, only the strictest of criteria.
Right, how many women have you slept with, Rob?
12, sir.
Welcome to the SAS.
I have to say, a lot of stuff happens in this episode, and I swear I'm skipping most of it. But also at one point, Sterling sleeps with Eve. Fucking lucky bastard. And we're not even done yet. They start training, and Lewis begins designing explosives for future use. I do also have to call out this picture he very pointedly picks up and looks at, which you better remember because it'll be on the test later. But what never does come up again is why he waits until after his hands are all crusty and gross to touch it. Finally, the episode closes out with them getting to their new SAS base camp in the middle of nowhere, behind enemy lines. Fun. I do think of all the episodes, this one definitely has the most noticeable needle drops, but it definitely doesn't take away from the episode or anything, and it's surely not something worth turning the episode off midway through and throwing a fit on Twitter over, but I guess that's just something people do for fun these days, so let them have it, I guess. Episode 3 comes, and as does David. Wait, no, that was last episode. As does the SAS's first official mission. Unfortunately for them, it's during a large sandstorm, and sadly not by Darude. Before they leave, they have one last chance to send off letters to their loved ones. We hear a few of the background characters narrate parts of theirs.
I'm having a very jolly time with this new unit.
But our main three all get their own little monologue. Patty and Owen continue to do a bad job of not making me think they're in love by writing about each other.
He's the same man I knew in Ireland, but lately I'm changed by him.
And Jock proposes to Picture Girl, who we find out is named Mirren. I hope he at least washed his hands before writing the letter this time. When they eventually go for the drop, it's a complete shit show. Lots of people die, including Owen, and both David and Patty's groups both give up almost immediately. Jock, however, presses on, citing the time he swam the Thames and Julius Caesar swam the Tiber, though he does clarify that.
I am not suggesting, Riley, that I am Julius Caesar.
Which, I mean, of course he's not Julius Caesar. Having the hots for someone named Mirren was Caligula's whole thing, duh. I really hope people watching this video are up to date on their knowledge about casts of Roman-themed porns from the 1970s, or else that joke makes no sense. They eventually come upon the long-range desert group, headed by Mike Sadler, who is in real life, as of recording this video, is the only original member of the Special Air Services still alive. Oh yeah, I guess, spoiler alert, he joins them. There actually is a cool video you can find on YouTube where the actor interviews him. He also mentions he played Aegon Targaryen on House of the Dragon, which, okay, he says that, but I'm not seeing that. What is the show doing to people? They eventually round up all the other remaining survivors and return to Cabrit, but not before Jock can give his new fun-loving traveling companion some witheringly judgmental looks. We then see Eve and Dudley discussing the failure of the mission before being put right back with our favorite boys, who, after raiding an abandoned camp for supplies and a piano, are ready to try again, this time with the help of Sadler and his men, and the next mission goes much better. They cut between 4 sneak attacks that happen simultaneously, although Sterling is disappointed to find that his target, Sirte Airstrip, is already deserted. Feeling inferior due to the other 3 successes, he decides to wage a very different kind of war by officially making it a competition. And now we get to episode 4, so... Look, I know I've been making little jabs and nitpicks here and there, but I really do love the first 3 episodes of this show. I also really love the last 2 episodes of this show. I also really love most of this episode of the show. But unfortunately, the first half is really overshadowed by an overwhelming sense of, dear God, what were you thinking? Now, I've obviously never written a television show before. I'd probably be terrible at it. But I have no clue how something like this could make it on screen in such an otherwise tight and beautiful show. Maybe it won't bother you as much, but for some reason, it just bugs me to no end. Now, I'm just going to go through the first half of the show for now, and by my tone, you'll probably be able to guess what my issues with it are. It starts with Sterling and Maine being as competitive as ever, with Jock keeping composure. This is until David lays out a plan for another mission, same as the previous one. 4 teams, our leads each in command of 1, with Fraser in charge of the 4th. Also, this time Sterling offers a bottle of whiskey to the most successful saboteurs. The scene is so well done in the way it highlights the dynamics that have formed within the group over the last couple episodes. All of the men in this regiment are volatile in their own way, but David and Patty especially can be explosive. Jock is vital and seemingly the only thing keeping the other 2 highest-ranked officers from completely devolving this team into a series of petty, childish contests that do nothing but stroke the ego and put the lives of the other men in danger. And though David now plays it off as a way to help Patty stay on course, Jock correctly hints that this is more of a personal matter for Sterling, which spawns from deep-rooted insecurity. This episode could have been great, goddammit! As the 4 groups begin to position themselves, Jock determines it is still too light out for his men to attack, so instead he begins to strip off his clothes. And when questioned about this by a fellow soldier, he uses my new favorite euphemism for masturbation.
You read your Bible. I'm going to pray in my own way.
Whatever you're into, I guess, but not right here, jeez. Okay, he doesn't do that, but he does get naked and go for a swim, while another letter to Mirren is read in voiceover, and we get a brief flash of the 2 of them together. Okay, a little heavy-handed? I'm sure you can guess where this is going, but oh, look, there's another one. At least it's Over? Please? Yeah, we're good. Clothes are back on. We get another fun exploding montage, with David once more failing to blow up any targets and Patty getting 27, now having 51 in total. Sterling then vengefully drinks the prized whiskey before they meet up again. And once again, Connor Swindells and Jack O'Connell fail not to be brilliant when playing off each other. And as I was rewatching this, I was thinking, maybe I was too harsh on it the first time. Maybe this episode's a lot better than I thought. Maybe, but then it happens.
Where the hell is Lewis? Mirren?
We get a full-on flashback scene between Jock Lewis and Mirren. Lewis, for some unknown reason, dressed up in his best Honest cosplay. My guy, I know we all miss it, but it's been over 2 years now. Let it go. But yeah, they go for a walk, have sex in a car, and then he asks her to marry him, which she just doesn't really respond to.
Did you hear me? I said when we're married.
And I know the dialogue is supposed to be kind of awkward in this scene, but that doesn't make it less awkward. By the way, where exactly did this come from? We have never had a full-on flashback in the show before. I mean, when David was in the hospital, he had brief flashes of things, but not a full-on scene. And you know what? It never happens again. Why is this here? To remind us that he had a girlfriend? You already told us that. This episode. And last episode. And it was hinted at the episode before. Was this supposed to make us sad when he died? Because of course he's going to die after this. I was surprised he was still alive by the time it was over. It probably would have been a lot more subtle if he just turned to the camera and been like, by the way, guys, this is my last mission before retirement. My wife's pregnant and I just won the lottery. Isn't being not dead great? And yeah, there we go. Next scene he dies, but not before this.
In answer to your proposal, my love, I'm afraid I have to say no. How can I marry a man who's already dead?
Rude. Yeah, his hallucination girlfriend stalks him around the desert for a while, and I'm just begging the show to put him down at this point. And I know this part does have a bit of precedence. In episode 1, Sterling sees his father after breaking his legs. So I guess in this universe, instead of taking drugs, the best way to have some fun hallucinations is to just give yourself a bit of leg trauma. The whole scene feels like it's supposed to be artsy or beautiful in some way, but it's just not. I even had to look it up to make sure he didn't actually die this way. And no, the real Jock Lewis was not running around chasing ghost ladies. Some of his fellow soldiers did say that Mirren's name was his last word, which is kind of sweet, but this isn't. Thank God, he's dead. And after being distraught over his close friend's death, the mail is delivered with a letter in it from Mirren accepting Jock's proposal, which David reads as we see Lewis's corpse one last time. And there you are, just over halfway through the episode. But let's go back a bit. Why did I find this part so awful? Well, they kind of did destroy any emotion I could have had over this character's death. Just cut all of that. We already had the letter and picture scenes from the previous episodes. We already like Jock and know his importance to the regiment. The whole thing was his idea in the first place. Have the last time we see Jock be the whole I'm gonna pray in my own way part. Before the skinny dipping and letter reading scene, of course. He just walks off and we never found out what he meant. How much more powerful would it have been if we found out with David and have to process our shock and anguish along with another incredibly powerful performance once again delivered by Swindells. Then we get the punch of Mirren's letter of acceptance, which, if you're really married to the idea of a flashback, is where you should have them. But now from David's perspective. He didn't know her, so he wouldn't see them fucking in the backseat of a car, but maybe he's imagining his friend happy and smiling. Something I don't think we ever saw him do. And for the love of God, can somebody please get him a less baggy suit? Sometimes people just die in war and you're not always there to get closure from your friends. And I know that's something they address later in an absolutely masterfully done scene, but these two occurrences are different enough not to feel repetitive. And I think it would just help to reinforce the message while also being genuine and heartfelt. But instead we have to watch a character digest information that we already came to terms with 20 minutes ago, even though it technically just happened. And just to clarify, I honestly don't blame either of the actors for how bad this scene is. I think it would have been beyond unsalvageable even if she had actually been played by Helen Mirren. Also, looking back on it, I just noticed, why did she act so weird about him wanting to marry her when they were together, but suddenly so happy that she danced or Sorry, danced. When he said basically the same thing to her in a letter. Okay, that's honestly a bit more of a nitpick, but it still kinda bothers me. Sorry, rant over for now. The rest of the episode's pretty good, though. After another rallying speech from Sterling, the remaining soldiers are granted a bit of leave in Cairo, though Patty stays in the desert and tries to search out Owen's body to no avail. They're also given a new set of jump wings designed by Jock before his passing, which was shown in an earlier scene, although when I first watched it, I have to admit, I definitely thought he was just doodling UFOs. While in Cairo, the majority of our rowdy boys get mixed up in a couple bathroom brawls. Not that David cares. He's busy participating in not only the second and final sex scene of this episode, but also this season. Although this one is at least a bit easier to watch, because at least I think I can be safe in my assumption that Eve didn't need to ask her dead grandmother for permission to fuck him. Oh, did I forget to mention that happened in the flashback too? Because it did, and it was just as, if not more weird than you think it would be.
My grandmother said yes.
That's Scam Gam's little girl. Go bang his brains out, darling.
Sorry, I know we're past it. Moving on. Unfortunately, despite Otis's best efforts, he's still unable to finish the job. However, this time instead of his penis being too big, it's this little bird that's putting up the barriers. At Eve's insistence, they then go to dinner and run into a drunk and disorderly Dudley Clark. Still pissed off at him for the way he's ran the unit so far. But their unhappy reunion is cut short by General Auchinleck introducing both David and the audience to Captain Berger, the leader of a group of escaped Ally-sympathizing French soldiers who have now been instructed to join up with the SAS, much to Sterling's disdain and anger, as he'd known that was Eve's goal all along. He does at first protest, saying that their training officer recently passed away, implying that Jock was the one in charge of teaching the recruits, which, although does match up historically, isn't exactly congruent with what we've been shown so far. I mean, in episode 2, when we were watching the training montage, it was actually Patty who seemed to be instructing them, while Lewis and his grubby hands were making bombs and groping pictures. Either way, David is eventually strong-armed into agreeing and puts Maine in charge, but for real this time, I guess. Which is something he is less than thrilled about, seeing this is just another way for Sterling to put him at a disadvantage so he can take the glory for himself, which you find out later isn't exactly a wrong impression. And that's where this episode ends. And it really makes me wonder, was it really as bad as Yes! Episode 5 is just a fun time all around. Patty is extremely harsh in training the Free French soldiers and shuts down all their attempts to power of teamwork their way out. This is until his goat gets got when one of the German-born French soldiers, Esnerd, drunkenly says some questionable things to the only Jewish recruit while mistreating the piano. Not the piano! And, well, does not end well for them. Which is too bad, because as a non-French-speaking Canadian, I tend to find kinship with French-speaking non-Canadians, as we both tend to look down on French-speaking Canadians. And you may be thinking, wow, that was a long way to go for a mediocre joke. Which is fair, but meanwhile, as Patty is seemingly falling for another man, David and a couple of the guys go on a mission and sneak into a German-Italian base, although this time they are accompanied by a special guest.
His first name is Randolph, his second name is Churchill.
Yeah, that actually happened as well, by the way. You know this part is going to be amazing. I mean, look at that beard. Now, that is what I call some sassy facial hair. I don't even know if I want to go through this part step by step. It's too fun. And I wouldn't be able to include all the best parts anyway. From the fake dysentery to casually smoking with the enemy, it's honestly great. So just watch the show, okay? Okay, deal. So instead of just doing a less entertaining recap of that segment, I want to take a moment to call out an odd pattern that I noticed throughout the show. There is a weirdly high amount of either ass or foot focused shots. Not so much that it's every other second, but enough to make it feel like what would have happened if Tarantino had directed Until Dawn. And once you see it, well, let's just say you really see it. Also, completely unrelated to either of the things I was just talking about, but how come this show is so eager to comment on getting sand under your foreskin? They bring it up 3 times.
Sand on the foreskin.
Sand under the foreskin.
Sand under the foreskin.
Is it really that common, or is it just some lingering trauma from one of the writers? I guess we'll never know. So since the mission's over, Eve shows up and her and Sterling make amends. Then after a bit of commentary on the drug abuse of soldiers during the Second World War, in a very touching scene, she returns to Alexandria and he gets back to Jalo, where he discovers the aftermath of Patty's outburst. David goes to where Patty has isolated himself. And I know I keep saying this, but this scene is absolutely extraordinary, and possibly tied for one of the best written scenes in the show. I'd show you the whole thing if I could, but just give these men all the awards.
Till one night someone's going to come in here and they're going to slit your throat.
They are welcome to try.
I know they won't, but they should. Honestly, the way you feel the massive dynamic shift in Jock's absence, contrasted with both of the characters' impulsive immaturity, only made worse by their manufactured rivalry, is just... Sorry, coming up with words is not something I'm good at. It's just perfect. Or perfect for me, at least. The episode is then finished with Maine reluctantly extending an olive branch to the Frenchmen, to which they just as uneasily accept. And here we are, the last episode, which in my opinion is both the most emotional and just overall best episode in the show. I love that each episode, with the exception of the fourth one, gets better and better. Unlike most shows, which tend to peak at the first and last episodes in a season, that is unless they completely fumble it right at the end, a certain actor from this show is rather familiar with.
You're a good man.
The final episode picks up just after the fall of Tobruk. Sterling wakes up hungover as Eve tends to his desert sores. They commiserate over the loss, and he tells her that he may wish to propose, but she reminds him that there is a war going on literally right outside their door, so now might not be the best time for that. Especially since he then has to go meet the Prime Minister, but not before losing the beard. Don't fret though, we get this equally sassy mustache as a replacement, and after getting a bit too personal with the PM...
I have desert sores all over my cock. Most crucially, I have one 4 inches up my ass.
Churchill grants the SAS free rein over the southern Mediterranean coast in order to aid in the supply efforts towards Malta by destroying the planes that would try to attack the relief ships. They are also given much more heavy-duty equipment and a promise that, should they succeed, the SAS will become an official regiment of the British Army, something David is absolutely frothing at the tip for. While explaining this to the other highest-ranked members, we get what I think is the other scene tied for best written. It's decided that Maine will take Burka, Jordan, Paddy's new sand wrestling buddy, will take Derna and Martuba. Sterling will get Benina, and Berger will take a submarine to the island of Crete and take Heraklion. We, however, never actually get to see a submarine, so I, for one, feel incredibly ripped off. After posing for a picture, the boys are off for one final explodey bomb montage of the season. I'm once again choosing not to discuss one of the storylines because I definitely cannot do Jordan's group justice. You're just gonna have to watch all the twists and turns in that one on your own time. All you need to know about that right now is they cause an early explosion that alerts the Burka airbase to a disturbance, rendering Paddy and his group unable to continue the mission without almost certain detection. And instead of taking the risk for glory, Maine uncharacteristically stands down, which is a very big step for him and makes one wonder if David would do the same, as he has shown time and time again to be much more petty and in need of validation. But I don't know if it would be to the level of putting his soldiers in danger. Just to clarify once again here, I am talking about the character. I have no clue how accurate he is to his real-life counterpart. Speaking of David and company, Sterling finally gets to participate in the chaos and bomb Benina to hell. However, there is a bit of controversy within the group when on their way home they blow through another airbase and shoot it up, despite protests that the men they killed were unarmed. And look, war crimes are bad. I can and probably should end that statement there. But the people they just shot were, you know, Nazis. And I'm pretty sure the Jewish people were also unarmed when they slaughtered them by the million. And I know everybody in this day and age compares everything to the Holocaust, which you definitely shouldn't do. But seeing as this literally took place during the Holocaust, I kind of feel like the comparison is just. Now that I'm done trying to get myself cancelled, it seems like the show is justifying my point by showing the Germans slaughtering a bunch of civilians on Crete before capturing Captain Berger. Although the text does make it seem like he captured Crete and not the other way around, I think they're just missing an on right about there. When the remaining group meets up, as an inverse of all the previous times, David is the only one victorious. Although you can still see the killing of the unarmed men weigh on him as he attempts to get Paddy to justify his actions. Though even his comparison to Maine's actions in Tamet doesn't seem to give him comfort. But no matter. He instead goes to find solace in the one place he knows will be more than welcoming. But before she can arrive at the Empire Club, Dudley Clark finds David sitting at the table where him and Eve first met. Now, this is another scene I wouldn't want to spoil, but because it does reinforce the point I made earlier, I am, just for the sake of the video, going to talk about it. But please, if you haven't seen it, pause this video right now and just go watch the entire show. It's amazing. You will not regret it, I promise. Except maybe episode 4. But, now, the other two scenes I mentioned may have been the best written, but this by far is the best acted, and that is saying a lot in this show. Sterling is still understandably angry at Dudley for trying to get both him and Churchill's son killed, but all those feelings mean nothing when he's told that Eve is dead. This part is what landed him on my list of actors I bring up just a little bit too often in conversation. Oh my gosh. This is everything Jock's death should have been, and they gave it to the character that doesn't even exist! Look, I really liked Eve as a character, mainly because I really like Sophia Boutelle as an actress, but if Lewis, you know, the one based off of an actual person, had gone out with even a fraction of the dignity that she had, episode 4 would be incredible. Seriously. Why did they have to try and show it? If we hadn't seen it, it would have made David's helplessness in the face of saving people he cares about so much more impactful. We see enough people die in this show, we did not need one more. Especially not the one we got where he's being roasted by a fucking ghost. Look, I am unhappy, but I am also very happy that at least this scene got it so right. Now that is real emotion right there. So Sterling goes back. What else does he have? Malta was saved thanks to their efforts, and oh look, Pearl Harbor just went boom, so it's time to meet up with the Americans. No, not you, Riley. David then sets off with Sadler and Cooper. Oh yeah, that's Cooper, by the way. He got a name in the first couple episodes, so you know he wasn't gonna die. Actually, I feel really bad for all the guys not in the first couple rows in episode 2. They literally just die at the episode of 3 and cease to have relevance before they even begin, so. When entering Gabe's Gap, the three of them are cornered by the Germans, and David is captured. All the others get away and decide to keep up their mission to find the American troops. But it begs the question, if David's in the hands of the enemy, who's in charge of the SAS? And that's it. That's where the season ends. They're already greenlit for number 2, and I can't wait. Though I am a bit nervous, as, spoiler alert, the real David Sterling was just kind of captured for the rest of the war. I think at one point he may have escaped the Germans and been recaptured by the Italians, but he's just sort of out of it. So that means of the 4 main characters we met in episode 1, 2 are dead, 1 is captured for like 3 or 4 years, and all we have left is Paddy Mayne. And as much as I like him as a character, my favorite parts were just them all playing off each other. I'm sure they'll probably develop the other members of the SAS more next time. I assume Jourdan and maybe Sadler will slip into more prominent roles, but who knows? Look, I'm sure it'll be great, but just no more flashback scenes, okay? So, yeah, that's all I have to say. Great performances. Fuck episode 4. Okay, that's a little harsh. Just fuck the first half of episode 4. No, that's not right either. Fuck the naked beach scene, the naked flashback scene, and the naked death scene. Actually, those last 2 weren't naked, but you know what I mean.